Hello and welcome back. As I promised a couple of weeks ago, I thought we would talk about the concept of good and evil. Now, this is extremely important this time of year. Next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. And so we here at Trinity, as many churches throughout the world, will be starting our annual pilgrimage to Jerusalem. As we start with remembering that we are all ashes and ashes, dust to dust, that we are all mortal. From the dust we came, to the dust we will return. These are the talking points of Ash Wednesday, whether you do it early in the morning or whether you do it at a special worship service in the evening. This is what we'll be talking about for the next few weeks as we look at repentance, as we look at the cost of the cross, as we look at the journey to Jerusalem and Holy Week in particular. All of these things are going to come down to one thing: good and evil. What is good? What is evil? The reality is, as we talked in the last time about the duality of humanity, how we have the body and the soul, how we strive to make the soul stronger, even as we have all of the desires and all of the hang-ups of the body, and what all that means and how this is all connected. But there is the cold, hard, constant reality that we all have to hang on to, which is evil. That we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, as Paul says in Romans. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life, once again, out of Paul. These are the things that we need to truly focus on. The first thing that you have to be able to do is to understand that there is a problem. You're not going to fix a problem if you don't believe that there is a problem. And the problem is sin. The problem is death. The problem is evil. And one of the best things, this actually comes out in The Usual Suspects, but it's not new there. They say the greatest thing that Satan ever did was to convince us that he never exists. Actually, this comes out of the Screwtape Letters from C.S. Lewis. And this is an important thing that we need to hang on to, because the reason Ash Wednesday is important, the reason Palm Sunday is important, the reason Good Friday, Maundy, Thursday, Holy Saturday, and ultimately Easter are all important is because we all understand this truism that all have sinned, that we have sinned. Not just you have sinned, but I have sinned. That I have fallen short of the glory of God. Not just you, but me as well. When we understand that, when we accept that, when we truly wrap our mind around that, then we're able to start moving forward. Now, as I've said in the past, there are three creation stories. There's two in the first couple of chapters of Genesis. And then there's the creation story that John does in his gospel, where he says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And even in that creation story, we see that God was creating a patch for creation even before creation occurs. It's like God already knows that it's going to crack in a certain spot. Now, you see this in a number of things. You can see this in cast iron. You can see this in pottery. You can see where someone sees that there's going to be a weak spot in the clay or in the iron, and so they already prepare it in such a way that they're able to strengthen it or repair something even before it breaks. Pottery is a great example of sometimes where there are inherent cracks, inherent flaws that maybe the potter doesn't see, maybe the potter doesn't get worked out, and no matter how hard you try, you can't get that foreign material worked out of the clay. For whatever reason, that weakness is always there. Well, there was a weakness in humanity. There's also in the weakness of free will. In order for us to have free will, we have to be able to fail. That's just the reality of it. If there is no free will, then there is no failure. One of the biggest problems I have with Calvinism is the fact of predestination. If God has already chosen who makes it and who doesn't, it doesn't matter what I think, say, or do. We have already been put in our categories no matter what. And so there is no free will. Free will is the essential part of human existence for me, from my understanding. And we have that free will, and the reality is even with that free will, we know we're going to fail. We know we're going to make mistakes. You don't have to teach humans how to sin. And I think the first thing we should probably do here is talk about sin itself. What is sin? Well, sin is a breaking of a relationship. It's a breaking of a relationship between you and God. It's a breaking of a relationship between you and another human being. It's also a breaking of a relationship with yourself. We can sin against ourselves. We can sin against others. We can sin against God. It is when we break these walls, when we break these boundaries and barriers, when we break this bond, that we have sinned. And sin is an essential thing that we have to truly understand. If there is no sin, then there can be no salvation. Once again, if you've watched this enough, you know that Charles Dickens's Christmas Carol is a favorite of mine. And in the beginning of that story, Charles Dickens says something very profound. Marley was dead. Of this we must, accept or acknowledge, because without Marley being dead, the rest of the story really has no meaning. Well, sin has created us to die, and if we do not accept that, if we do not acknowledge that, if we do not grasp that, then the rest of the Easter story has no meaning. Once again, without acknowledgement of sin, then all of a sudden Christmas, Good Friday, and Easter, the three most holy days in the Christian calendar, mean nothing. Because Christmas is not necessary if we do not acknowledge human frailty, if we do not acknowledge human sin. And there's been a major problem in today's society, in the United States especially, and around the world if you actually pay any close attention, to the fact that we have, in fact, started calling everybody else's sin out, but we never look at our own. American politics is horrible right now in the fact that the very things that the Republicans want to punish the Democrats for, the last Republican did, and they don't want to say anything. Or vice versa. When we're wanting to impeach a Republican president, we're ignoring the things that the Democratic president may or may not have done. We do not say right is right and wrong is wrong, and if you're wrong, then I am going to oppose you. If you do something wrong but you're in my political party, then I'm going to explain it away. And the only thing that is wrong is if you're in a different party. The greatest sin that President Trump did, if it comes right down to it, was represent the Republican Party. That's what so many people had against him, ultimately. And a lot of the things that the Republican Party was wanting to do under his sponsorship, I guess is a good word for it. Now, turn that around. The very things that the Republicans were just saying, oh, that's boys will be boys, or that's just locker talk, or that's no big deal, is the very things that they wanted to impeach President Clinton over. They started looking into a shady real estate deal and then impeached him because he lied about having an affair. So it had nothing to do with the land sale, which was the whole point of the Whitewater special prosecution, and it went all the way to something else. And the Republicans said he lied under oath, he had an affair, all these terrible things, and we need to get rid of him because he's bad. And I definitely don't want him in the youth Sunday school department. Let me be clear on this. But that said, Then President Trump comes in, and we know that President Trump had affairs. We know that he's lied under oath. We've seen how he has broken promise and he has broken vow and he has done all of these things. And yet the Republicans are going, oh, well, that's no big deal. Well, if it's no big deal for President Trump, why is it a big deal for President Clinton? And why are you now talking about wanting to impeach President Biden over issues as well? So it is hypocrisy at its best in the fact that we are just sitting here claiming that the other side is evil. And here lately, both sides have claimed that the other side are Nazis. And unfortunately, we should realize that, I'm beginning to believe we should all take a correspondence course off the internet on political science and what fascism was. Not the fascism just of Nazi Germany, but the fascism as it was created and installed in Italy. Because this is a populist form of not really governance as it is politics. And I think it would be interesting for all of us to have a better understanding of what the fascists in Italy and in Germany in the 20s and 30s of the last century were saying, so that we could truly see the manipulations of both of the American parties as they stand today, whether it be the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or for that matter, many of the other parties that are kind of in there somewhere. The manipulation of the American narrative, the manipulation of the populace, the manipulation of the storyline, how these things are going, and it all rolls back into this concept of evil. We have to believe that there is good and evil because we see good and evil. There was a German philosopher, which you surely have heard of, is Frederick Nietzsche. Frederick Nietzsche said, "Oh, there's no evil. There's just good and bad. There's better and not as good." And he was trying to get us around this idea of evil, that there really wasn't any evil. And unfortunately, he was wrong. He was just flat out wrong. There is evil. We have seen the evil in our world today, whether it be Jonestown back in the 70s, whether it be the Branch Davidians, whether we talk about January 6th here last year, or we talk about all these other things. There is evil in this world, and there is evil within each of us. As we come to terms with the reality that there is evil in me and there is evil in you, we then also have to come to terms with there is good in each of us as well. And it is important that we start understanding that that was already in the Garden of Eden at the very beginning. The easiest way God could have made sure that Adam and Eve never sinned was to not put the apple tree in the garden with them in the first place. And of course, the apple tree, I say that as a colloquialism. We don't know what the fruit was. It has historically been said to be an apple, which is obviously not what it was. But it doesn't matter. The story that we really want to remember is that God put that temptation there, knowing full well that they would succumb to temptation. And that this would be the first step of breaking the relationship, but also reconciling the relationship as well. Teaching humanity to be more than what they start out of, being more than the sum of our parts. Whether that's individually or culturally or socially or population-wise, we can be so much more than we are. But we have to understand that we have our limitations. If you only compare yourself to the rest of the sixth graders in your local school, you may feel like you are the fastest person on the planet. But as you go further up, you will discover that there are people faster than you. You will discover that there are people smarter than you. They are stronger than you. They are better than you socially, physically, mentally, spiritually. And hopefully, what you do is you take that as a challenge to become stronger yourself, to become smarter yourself, to become more spiritual. As you do this, as you exercise these various muscles, the choice is, or the hope is that we become more. And so we're going to be talking about this. Today we're talking about the very beginning, the very origins of good and evil. And it starts in the garden. And we understand that God set us up for a failure, but God didn't make us fail. God made the opportunity to fail very easy and right there. Simple to do. Just like putting out a plate of brand new, just out of the oven baked cookies, putting them on the counter and saying, okay, whether it be the dog, whether it be the child, whether it be the husband or whoever, don't touch these cookies. They're for something else. They're not for you. Don't touch them. Leave them alone. And as soon as you leave, there's going to be a cookie missing. The dog's going to pull down the whole plate and act like the cat did it. The kid's going to take one. The husband's going to actually go down deep and pull one out of the bottom so that it looks like the stack's the same. That's part of what's going to happen. And you know that as soon as you put the plate on the counter. You know that you're telling them, don't do this. There are repercussions. But as soon as you walk out the room, you know without a shadow of a doubt that it's going to happen. That's where God was on this whole tree in the center of the Garden of Eden. God put the tree there knowing full well it was too tempting. It was too beautiful, too much of an option. And as soon as God walked out of the room, God knew already what our choice was going to be. That's an important thing to understand. But even at that point, as we read the Genesis creation stories, as we read the John creation story, we see that God already had the patch in place and ready to put in place to bring us back into the fold. That is the story that we want to look at. We need to talk about a number of things with good and evil. We need to talk about self-determination. We need to talk about whether or not there is the freedom of choice. We need to talk about where does God sit on all of these things. And does God truly need to have immutable knowledge? Is God omniscient? Is that necessary? Or where is God on all of these spectrums that we have? And as we discuss this, hopefully we can have some open discussions among ourselves and to hear some things. I welcome your comments, but this is kind of the prelude to the first verse. And so I wanted to just kind of get some of the groundworks out there for you after we've already had our talk about dualism. Now we're going to get ready for the actual conversation about what is good and what is evil. And are they relative? Is there times when something is evil that it might actually be good? Are there times when something good might actually in fact be evil? Are they relative to where they place on the timeline? And how does time work into all of this as well? There are a lot of things, especially right now, that we are dealing with where people were one way when they were alive, but now when we compare them to what our outlook on life is today, we are finding it hard to condone who they are and what they were doing. And these are those types of things that we really want to have conversations about. So once again, leave your comments below. Remember that other people are going to be reading this, and to be respectful of their thoughts and process, and use language that you want to see out in the universe for the rest of time, because that's how the internet works. But until that next time, God bless and enjoy your journey to Jerusalem.